I'm Gerry Green. I work for the Coeur Tribe Wildlife Program in Hangman Creek. My job is to help revive some native habitats in Hangman so that the stream can function to provide habitat for trout and salmon.
Okay, so what are the current obstacles or barriers the salmon face in the Spokane River and Hangman Creek?
Well, we're talking Spokane River and Hangman Creek. That's pretty local. In Spokane River, you can't talk about barriers unless you're talking about the dams in the Spokane River. There are several dams there, and behind the dams or above the dams are the reservoirs, and the reservoirs, salmon are evolved to move through moving water, to migrate through moving water, and so the reservoirs slow everything down, and it makes it more difficult for the salmon to find their way through there. But really the biggest issue in Hangman Creek in the Spokane is the low quality of water, and actually the lack of water in the summertime. Hangman used to provide a good salmon fishery, good local salmon fishery, but today what happens is it's very flashy, so the rains come in January, February, March, but that water is not held on the landscape. It escapes because of all the farming and the ditching and the drain tiles. So what happens is you get really high flows during the rainy season and virtually no flows during the dry season. So our problem is to use the landscape the way it's intended, the way it originally functioned, and that is as a huge sponge. You look at the Palouse Prairie, the Palouse Hills. I look at it today and I see this monster sponge out there that we could hydrate when the water comes, hold that water in the soils, and then release it slowly into the stream, so that through the dry season you still have a stream that functions as a stream that provides fish habitat. That's the single biggest barrier we have, is the stream function itself is not there the way it could be.
So would you attribute that to climate change as well?
No.
No?
The climate change plays a role because we don't have the snowpack that we used to. The snowpack would deliver a lot of water in June, but now it's delivered in April, May. But still, the landscape should function to hold that moisture. We still should get the function out of the stream.
So what would you say are the current habitat restoration needs?
Floodplain. The floodplain, actually we call it the riverscape. It's the stream and the floodplain. The stream and floodplain should interact when the heavy rains come and the heavy precipitation comes. The water should flood out of the stream onto the floodplain, and then as the heavy precipitation recedes, then it comes back into the stream channel. We call that interaction the floodplain and stream the riverscape. And so we're trying to restore that riverscape, move the agriculture away from the riverscape, so that it can function naturally. The other thing is the uplands play a big role as well. Floodplain playing the major role in holding the moisture, but there's also moisture in the uplands as well. So the uplands feed into the floodplain, and the floodplain feeds the stream. So our tactic is to move the agriculture off the floodplain, repair, eliminate or decommission all the ditches and the drains and the drain tile, and then get aspen trees, camas meadows on the floodplain so that they can hold the moisture and supply the stream.
So where were we with the restoration, and where are we now, and where are we going?
Well, we started in 2000, actually. This project started in 2000, 2001. we began hiring people and getting started. But where we started was we had agriculture right up to the stream channel, all the way from Spokane, as up to the headwaters of Hangman Creek. So we're working within the Coeur d'Alene Reservation. And essentially we had agriculture all along Hangman Creek, all the way up. We've been able to purchase some properties through mitigation funds, both BPA mitigation, wildlife mitigation, and a VISTA, wetland mitigation, and moving agriculture away from the floodplain. We have purchased some significant properties up around Sanders and downstream to Sheep Creek and around Sheep Creek. Our tactic is to start high and work low, because if you're working low, you got everything coming at you. All the floods and everything are coming at you, and you can't manage things from low in the watershed. We work high, get the water stored in the higher elevations, the higher floodplains, and then start working down where we can make more of a change.
So that's the direction that we're going then, is to go from the top down?
Essentially, yes. We're not going to be able to complete the restoration without the bottom, because the whole watershed sort of works like a bathtub. You take the plug out of the bottom and the whole thing drains. So we're not going to be able to repair everything. What am I trying to say? We're not going to be able to repair it completely until we get to the bottom, until we can stop the escape of the water from the bottom. So as the years pass, we just keep moving farther and farther downstream. We're using also CCRP, the Department of Agriculture processes to help move agriculture off the floodplain and get that floodplain functioning.
Do you have any landowners that work with you? Like for the land that the tribe doesn't own? Like, do you guys reach out to other landowners?
Oh, absolutely, yes. We, the CCRP and CRP, that's available to anyone, and we partner with private landowners. They have many of them. Several of the landowners have said, we shouldn't have taken those lands out of production because they're too hard to grow a crop on. They're too wet in the wet season, and when they flood, they deposit debris on the crop fields, and they're just too difficult to get equipment in and out of during the seasons when they need the equipment there. So yes, there are some landowners that are willingly taking part.
So when you say CCRP, can you...
A Continuous Conservation Reserve Program. That's a program that Department of Agriculture, through the Farm Service Agency, they'll pay a landowner so much. It's not a lot of money, but it's something, to not grow a crop on those acres.
Oh, that's good. So, so what would you say, have there been any other, like, what would you say the agricultural impacts have been on, I mean, that's primarily what you've been talking about, but,
Right.
But, so historically, it's been the agriculture that's impacted the streams. Do you want to add any more on that?
Well, forestry has played a role as well. They have changed the way the precipitation stays on the landscape. In the upper elevations, you'll see all the clear cuts and all the smaller trees. So you don't have we mentioned global warming earlier, but part of the reasons why we don't have the later meeting in June, we don't have the runoff in June like we did. Part of the reason is we don't have the trees in the upper landscape to hold the snowpack. But with global warming, that's accelerated that considerably beyond what just the absence of trees would do.
So who is responsible for that, for the clear cutting and
Timber companies.
timber companies?
Yes.
And do you work with them at all to, like, are they replanting? Are they?
They are replanting. I don't work with the timber companies. The fisheries program has had some success working with the fisheries with the timber companies. I don't. I primarily work with farmers with on mitigation properties.
Right. So, so what additional things do we need to do to make the habitat viable for salmon, do you think?
Well, actually, the biggest thing is beaver. You know, this is the one thing that I think about and work with most of the time. Beaver are actually what we call our heavy lifters. They're the ones who are actually going to repair this whole process. And if you look at the original, the earliest descriptions of the Hangman watershed, it describes a sequence of ponds, pools, lakes with little rivulets between them, and that's essentially a beaver dominated landscape, beaver dominated floodplain. The beaver will be the ones that really actuate the return of fish habitat in the Hangman watershed. So we're partnering, we call it partnering with beaver. We're in a position now, a state where we don't have a lot of aspen willow because we don't have a lot of beaver. The water table is not up high enough to facilitate the growth of aspen and willow, but we don't have a lot of beaver because we don't have any aspen willow. So it's this negative feedback loop that we're trying to break at this point. We're trying to assist the beaver to get the water in the floodplain so we can get the aspen, which will in turn feed the beaver, so that the beaver can build their dams and the pools and all the fish habitat.
Wow, it just goes to show just how everything is so
Everything is interconnected, yes.
Definitely.
One thing relies on another, which relies on another, which goes back to the beginning. Yes.
So why did you go into this field, Gerry?
To be honest, I was looking for a job, and this was one of the last ones that became available to me. I traveled through this landscape. You know, I wanted to be an endangered species biologist in national parks, in a lot of public land areas, and I worked with grizzly bears for years. And so that's where I wanted to be. I wanted to be in the pristine habitat. And when I came through this landscape and I saw the agriculture, I was, this is the last place in the world I want to be. You know, that's nowhere. I don't want to be anywhere near that. I'm just not a fan of agriculture and what agriculture does. This alteration to the landscape. I like the pristine habitats. But it turns out this is where I can do the most good. Pristine habitats, they seem to be doing just fine. It's out here where the change really needs to happen.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for all that you do to help restore the habitat and bring our salmon back.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now how do I stop it?